Alright, the main question I have now, is she even still alive? What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here from Bad Doom to have it on me and keep it on me at all times. Another fun fact. Here we are to do a breakdown / live reaction and straight. Ooh, that was clean. That was clean. You had to pre-draw it. Sorry, I'm testing out a new recording style, a new review style, a new couple different things. And one of the things I need to do is make sure I draw alongside me speaking, because the software I'm now using to try and eliminate the weird buzzing sound in the back of all my videos, it will just literally eat the sword sounds too. Hopefully you can't hear the chair that I'm moving around in. Hopefully you can't hear anything that's literally not my voice, except I want you to hear the sword draw, because that's half the appeal. This blade of worthiness is now part of my DNA. That's why I have it on me and keep it on me at all times. But of course, I have 15 minutes to tell you how I feel about this chapter wapter of Kagurabachi da. So let's not waste any more time. Let's hop right into chapter 15? Where am I? 3 years in the past? Chapter 116 of Kagurabachi desu, which is known as Princess. So, we get introduced to the princess of the Soga clan, and this is kind of lore dump the chapter with references built in, and I love it. Notably, I definitely do understand the important balance of just not like throwing up your lore on your reader or the consumer of whatever form of media it is. Like, I know people get really sick of the lore dump S chapters, or even just lore dump pieces of stories or episodes and media, but this chapter is lore dump and really good context building, and really makes me realize just how little we still understand the Kagurabachi world. Especially considering how relatively small scale the world is in terms of like, the rest of the world doesn't necessarily matter, right? Everything in Japan is of Japan, of by Japan, right? I'm not even sure how many times other countries outside of Shikoku, which technically isn't even a country, it's an island, have been truly mentioned in narrative. It's really isolated by its terms, but we still know very little about it, and this chapter is a fantastic bit of proof of that. We did know about the Great Sorcerer families, we did know of the Soga clan very vaguely, but considering how important the Soga clan is, it goes to show how disconnected we are from the way the world functions, as we had literally no context for this before this chapter, I'm pretty sure. But as we find out, the Soga clan is the container of this princess, the incarnation of the goddess of Izanami, as she predicts the threats to the land of Japan. And she's held in very high reverence. But, notably, she's not just held in very high reverence by the government, who obviously would like to have the ability to see the future, but she's also held in very high reverence by all the sorcerer clans. And I do like this idea that a certain Sazanami clan, along other major clans were running around, that were there and were involved and were still known to be active in doing devious, dangerous, and diabolical things, and sort of laying the groundwork retroactively in the past to show why someone like Soga may have overlooked things like this, but now after getting 18 years of reflection to sit back and really think about all that he overlooked, how corrupt and broken the system was. The government at the time and the head of the Sazanami clan, known runner of the Rakuzachi, were just in the same room, all getting the exact same prediction of the future. Why? Because the Sazanami clan held power. So did the Ushi clan, the Hiru clan, the So clan, the Tori clan, the Ko clan. And obviously, the Soga just is the biggest and the most rational and is the one connecting all these clans. It's very interesting to get that level of world building. Another interesting piece about that is Princess Soga, and very specifically how it's built into the nature of the Kagurabachi world. Princess Soga is really a title, if not necessarily an actual person, let's say. Because Chiaki, the current Princess Soga, was no more than a servant, right? As we find out just the other day, she was just a servant like the many other members of the Soga clan. And before that, she actually did play with this main trio that we knew existed and had little context for. And obviously, if you couldn't tell, Chiaki is Sojiro. So what name again? But Sojiro again. Chihiro's mother. Right? You can tell they literally have the exact same eye shape. They even have some similar facial structure. The only thing he didn't directly inherit from her is like the dots. And obviously he has the wider face of his father. But overall, I can even tell by her disposition, this is undeniably Chihiro's mother. And that obviously is very intriguing considering the state of the world as it is as we see it in the flashback. Speaking of the state of the world as we see it in the flashback, we get a nice, juicy, amazing, legendary, and scrumbly-umptious sighting of Akimura Soga, the young man who would go on to become the great slayer of Shikoku. And I do like that we see that he was truly like that on all means, but even still, he, just as Chiaki, was held back by tradition. In terms of just raw skill and aptitude, the only criteria he hasn't met to actually be head of the guard and personal guard to his elder sister Chiaki is the fact that he's not old enough. but in terms of fighting skill, he'd already be a commander. Akimura Soga was always a monster. Now, of course, this still is questionable in terms of whether or not he was just like born this way, as notably we find out that Chiaki once again wasn't really actually special until the actual heir to the Soga clan ultimately gave up on the living thing. We don't know exactly what happened to her. I almost read it on the first read, like maybe it was an assassination or something, but regardless, it could possibly make sense of the idea that the clans may not wanting to give up future sightings, and considering future sightings may not always be positive for them, but essentially, Chiaki was raised to this position. She became and inherited the title of Princess Soga because the true proper heir ended up perishing, and she got the gift of prophecy later on. And through this gift of prophecy, we see that she has been risen in power and status to the point where she's no longer a servant, but that doesn't necessarily mean she's not still a servant, just a servant to a grander idea, a servant to all of Japan. Sure, she may be the living incarnation of a goddess, but that doesn't mean she's free. She's still a human girl who falls to her mother, who at first I was like, oh wait, great, her mother actually cares for her, but then we see that is the mother that is essentially cutting off Chiaki's connection to the boy that she knew and seemingly loved and cared for. We knew, well, things probably got a little bit physical in the midst of the war, if you know what I'm talking about, as she even ended up seeing in her prediction that Kunishige is in Tokyo. And of course we do know that it's true. He's currently being held for discussing the nature of the Datenseki and presumably getting on the pathway to forging the enchanted blades. And we find out the person who was maintaining the relationship between Chiaki and Kunishige, aka two people who once were able to stand and play together as equals, while now one is a bum and the other is a princess, actually was the greatest wingman of all time, Shiba, I suppose. He's been hard carrying. He was delivering letters back and forth. And notably, Shiba must be from one of the larger clans. Like, it may just be he's just so goated with the sauce that they're letting him get away with so much. But notably, he is one of the elite guard. He's one of her bodyguards. He directly serves the Soga clan. But despite clearly doing things that he's not supposed to be doing, like delivering letters between a commoner and specifically the princess, who's supposed to marry some high-blooded noble and have a wonderful continuous line to ensure the prosperity, I suppose, of the entire Soga clan, none of that necessarily matters to her. And we know it didn't end up mattering to her because, well, Chihiro exists. That does definitely raise a question, because does that mean, like, Chihiro could possibly inherit the future sight thing? I'm not sure. Is it just a woman? Considering it's the goddess Izanami, it may just be a woman who could inherit the power. Hold on, let me double check. This is, I should have reread twice before I actually started doing the review. Let's see. Foretells disasters, there's earthquakes, the Datenseki discovered through prophecies, or millennia. Countless of these prophets have allergic to handle crisis changes because of that. The power of the whole dynasty, the soul or the government, from social blah, 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 blah. I think it has to be a woman. So I don't think Chihiro can obtain the power, but still, very interesting idea. The question of her being alive is still very vague to me though, because the most context we've had for Chihiro's mother, Chiaki, before this point is that Kunishige said, oh, we'll talk about her someday. She probably isn't alive. I mean, that'd be kind of crazy if, he never knew her for 18 years, but still, it's clear by the nature of this chapter that their relationship was never approved of. And it's very likely the Soga clan is still around. And on the mass scale, at least until recently, Akimura Soga was considered a brave hero who saved all of Japan, which probably only increased the Soga clan's clout generally to the public. So, I don't know. But on the other side of things, we see that as Chiaki is still very focused on Kunishige, trying to see what he can do with his little sword-smithing hands. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. We see that Kunishige is a little bit more accepting of their current situation, as Shiba pokes and prods, being like, you know exactly what. Chiaki, of course. Want me to take another letter? Never noticed just one. Or I could take you there in person, like a surprise reunion. And then we see Kunishige be like, dude, you could be fired for real, and then you wouldn't be able to feed me, bro. I'm so hungry. But ultimately, Kunishige admits that it's just better for them to separate, and ultimately, a guy like him should just live for the sword and nothing else. He was never meant to do what possibly was. And of course, the dramatic irony of all this is that we know something does happen, right? Obviously, we know that I don't think Chihiro is even conceived until the war starts. I'm guessing? Probably? What's the, I still need to study the Kagurabachi timeline, probably lay it out and get, ready in a Google Doc presentation or something like that. Because I still don't fully know, but Chihiro is conceived, I think, during the war. He has to be. Because Akimura says he remembers Chihiro being this small, right? So that implies that Chiaki gave birth to Chihiro, who is Kunishige's son, during the active point of the war, because the war, well, actually, maybe not. When we don't know when Soga tweaks out. Do we know when Soga? Man, I need to just study the timeline, bro. Because if we know when Soga tweaks out, that may have been post-war. Maybe he came back from the war after it was ended because they had the whole treaty and such. And then maybe a few days later, after Soga saw Chihiro, he then tweaked out and went crazy and then destroyed everything. And then they had to fight him and seal him away. But I don't exactly know the timeline of that. But we know ultimately, while Kunishige is trying to accept his fate, he's not really accepting it. And even Shiba's like, sure, if you say so, buddy. I know what you're trying to do. I know what you're trying to be like. You know what I'm trying to be like. I'm trying to set you up. And we see, ultimately, Kunishige is focused on the one thing that unites us all. The one thing that exists in all of our cores. The one thing that we all need at the end of the day. And that's food, right? Because why worry about forlorn love when he could actually fill the hole in his stomach rather than the hole in his heart? And we see that the greatest sushi chef ever goes, buddy, stick around a little longer. I'll feed you well. Subaru special rice balls. And that gets Kunishige extremely excited because food. And hey, I don't blame him. I don't think I should. I think the word munch has changed in all contexts. But regardless, I also love food. So I get Kunishige's very excited reaction now that's distract from him. But, of course, I've talked about the idea of Chiaki and her role in the grand scheme of the sorcery world. Now we get a nice little glimpse of Soga and how he exists in the world of the Soga clan, and very specifically how things are changing and evolving thanks to the unknown natures of the relationship with Shikoku and how all the different sorcerer clans are here. But naturally, we have the idea of the actual prophecy that is brought up here. The initial meeting between people from Shikoku and the meeting between the people of Japan at Yurakuhama? I hope I'm saying that right. Beach, right? Ultimately, they shall meet, they shall talk, a ship shall arrive, and it shall bear the royal family. So, ultimately, her visions of the future are built in a way I don't exactly mind. I'm always very much against like hard foretellings of the future, but you can tell that despite the fact that they come as dreams that then manifest as crystal clear afterwards, she still isn't able to fully tell everything. As she admits, she thinks that Kunishige is in Tokyo, but she can't exactly tell. So her future sight is very, very vague. It's not perfect. And we know in a macro sense that as perfect as the future sight could have been, it still didn't end up working out fully because, you know, the whole slaughter of Shikoku things. And obviously it seems like her future sight is also relatively short range. Sure, 8 days into the future, having a concrete level of information on that is actually really, really good. You never know what could happen a second from now, not to talk of over a week from now. But still, the nature of that meeting and the vagueness of it all. She just says, there's going to be a meeting, and apparently the royal family's going to show up. So that level of vague future sight is one I don't mind in narrative. The times I'm always like heavily against and biased against future sight is when it's like, oh yeah, when we say future sight, we mean future sight. Like you get perfect 2020 vision, clear of everything, and then somehow, some way, either the narrative does have to follow that because it's a tragedy, or it's a hero's journey, and the future sight actually never really mattered at all, and we're gonna break it. So I'm rather happy with how Chiaki is introduced and integrated into the narrative. I do love the world building of this chapter, basically learning about the Soga clan and seeing the ways of corruption that Akimura may have been blind to thanks to his presumable raising in the clan. I'm not sure. If Soga was a prodigy from since he was young, maybe he was always training, but maybe he only got this opportunity once his sister was risen up to actually being princess of the Soga clan. Regardless, seeing young Akimura is cool, and you can obviously tell here, at least in this environment, he's a lot more mellow, even in comparison to the Akimura we saw when Samura was active, right? If you'll remember, right before the battle with Samura and Akimura concluded, the two had met in the past. And here we see a admittedly very determined, but much more relaxed and playful Akimura. Though admittedly, Akimura is still very playful and relaxed when he's not locking in. And Chiaki as a character is one I'm very interested to see in terms of how she's used narratively. I hope she's more than just the mother character, right? I know, obviously, one of the main things about Chihiro is the idea of isolation. He doesn't have a father anymore. You know, was even able to meet his mother. And meeting his mother this late into his life probably wouldn't do much of anything. So I'm assuming she's probably just gonna die. I don't know if it's confirmed, though. So you don't know if it's confirmed. Soga doesn't even confirm hardline or not, whether or not she's still alive. Like, I don't think she perished in childbirth. I don't know. But regardless, I'm hoping that she gets more than just possible interesting connection with Kunishige. And I'm very interested to see how she feels about the Enchanted Blade. Because presumably she predicts their creation as well, right? who knows, maybe some of her abilities and her foresight will actually end up guiding Kunishige on how to create the enchanted blades. As obviously, once Kunishige gets given the responsibility of forging the Dattenseki after the war begins, presumably probably about midway through when they realize the enchanted blades are actually needed, he's probably going to need a little bit of guidance, a little bit of help. And who knows, maybe that led to a certain young swordsman being born many, many years later, who's currently swordsmithing, last we saw him. And overall, for the pacing, the one last comment I want to make before I quickly run out of time, I have like 42 seconds left. I do still like the pacing. You can tell that we are genuinely still taking our time and fleshing out the world more. So I think the one major critique that Kunishige got for part, or not Kunishige, that Hokuzono Sensei got for part 1 was well heard. Maybe his editors or he himself has like been decided to rather properly sink us into this world and help us understand it and establish it and properly flow it out. And I'm very excited to see how all that's going to go. Though obviously with an 8-day time skip, we're going to miss the initial interactions between Subaru and Kunishige, but still, I think we'll get some flashbacks to it. We'll get some more understanding of it. We'll get flashbacks from the flashbacks. And I'm very interested to see how the people from Shukoku and the royal family specifically interact with the government to immediately lead them to the point of war. But I'm now out of time. So if you made it all the way through this video, please do me a favor and leave Talk of Irishima. That sounds nice. Talk of Irishima in the comment section down below. I want to thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. And make sure you hit that link to the notification bell so you don't miss out on any news that come to the channel. Also, please let me know if you can hear the buzzing thing still in the background. I'm hoping not, because, man, it feels weird to just breathe down my mic's neck like this, but I gotta be on it, or else things will go bad. So, please let me know. If this still isn't working, I'll have to find out another way. I managed to swap out the mic itself if it's still present. I couldn't hear it when I was editing yesterday's video. I just recorded 2 videos in this style, so I'll see how it all goes. But regardless, also, I do have my Patreon down below. You can drop 1 bean, or not 1 bean. I give a Patreon for as low as $1 a month. You can member for as low as $3 a month. Both are linked down below. You can just join the channel, or you can click the link to the Patreon. You get early access to all my videos. You get early ad-free access to all my videos. Access to all my videos, not just here on the main channel, but on the second channel, that called the reaction, link in the description down below in the card. On top of that, I do have the fact that if you get your name listed at the end of every single video. If you're a $3 member or a $3 patron or higher, you get your name listed and read aloud at the end of every single video. And I do have my Twitch, that got the controller link to the description down below. Every Friday at 8 p.m. ES Tizzle. Feel free to roll through. We have a wonderful time over there. And on top of that, I do have a link to my Ko-Fi down below where you drop 5 minutes for a short video, 20 videos, small video, or any beats at all. Any support is always greatly appreciated. Now I want to thank you so much for watching once again, and hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Wait, see, look, that's why I need to keep talking as I do the sword draw, or else it won't be heard, I don't think. So let me do this right now. And there we go. I want to thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with a Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our sketch tier members: Eternal Flame, Red Wolf 4765, Astro, Glacier XZ, Zera, J2MA, Buddha Ura, Yuki Ally, Grim, Ollie, The Boy, Corey Watson, Damon Brown, Tim Thomas, Kaving, ORXN, Logan Guzman, Dead Mean, Keon Stewart, DNA, Edwin Ingbignova, Straw, Antavius Mitchell, Superflame Zero, Weary Exile, Alex Kenny, Todd, The Practical One, Landon Clapwick, Heath Nelson, CAET, Plant Crone, Blast, Brandon Payne, Black Sage, Multi-Batman Superman, Zalims, Joe Bean, Sleepin' John, The Young Family Pastel Pandora, Mosity King DKG, Andreen Bonnet, Akulare Babatunde, at JDog2656, Union Eye, Funny Dude, Athenzi Shear, Magic, Sino King, Sheesh King, Aswin Heriprasetia, JMB KD, CCC, Enzo, Kitty Liddy, Drold Harris, Dino, Victor Jacobs, and Axis XC. Then, let me thank you to our line art tier patrons: A+A, Dread Zoan, Kevin the Encarnacion, Lil Kodo, Midnight Lord 21, and Sean. Then I'd like to thank you to our Ink tier members: Shrimpo the 4th Shrimp 06. Then I'd like to thank our digital art tier members: J Warrior and AZ Void. I'd like to give a final thank you to our colored art tier patrons: Walkie Munoz and Walkie Munoz.